Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the town hall with myself, to Chancellor Gillman, in partnership with the Academic Senate and the Staff Assembly. We'll have some remarks from all of those, and then we have an additional set of people here to help address any questions that you may have. We are grateful for your attendance this morning. And grateful for all that you've been doing. It's an incredibly challenging environment, changing rapidly, and the flexibility of faculty and staff to switch remote and stay remote and get work done at a great clip has been an unbelievable benefit to the campus, and we're really appreciative. But we know that there's a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, and want to be able to spend some time talking about that with you. A few ground rules. The chat is off. You are all muted. The best way for you to interact with us is through the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So please type in your questions. We're going to have remarks, and then towards 10:30, we'll kind of open it up, and I'll go through the questions and have appropriate people to answer them. And I'll do all the introductions a little bit later on. But let us get started. So let me turn it over to Chancellor Gillman to give a little bit of an update.
Thank you so much, Hal, and good morning, everyone. Thanks to all of you who are joining us today. Hello to everyone who will be watching this event later. I also want to let people know that for this live event, closed caption is available for people. I want to thank everyone who made that possible. And also interpretation is available, and you can check those alternatives also at the bottom of your screen. I want to start also by expressing my hope that you and your loved ones are doing all right, that you're staying safe and sane under these circumstances. I also want to express my deep and abiding appreciation and gratitude for all that you've done to keep this university moving forward under unprecedented circumstances. It is really an inspiration. Because it's Staff Appreciation Week, I want to extend special appreciation to our amazing staff, and especially our essential workers who have been coming to campus. And I also want to acknowledge the amazing partnership that we have had with the Academic Senate and Staff Assembly. Our successes to date really are a byproduct of many people working together very well. We want to give you an overview of where things stand and where we're going, and then we mostly want to hear from you. So I'm going to take about 10 minutes to touch on very quickly how the fall is going, what winter will look like, our finances, and especially our ongoing commitment to workforce preservation and more generally keeping this community together while we manage through some unprecedented challenges. Then a few other people will say a few words, and then we'll spend most of our time taking your questions. So first, the fall quarter. We're now several weeks into fall quarter, and things are going very well, especially compared to some of the headlines you're seeing in newspapers that are reporting on what is happening on campuses around the country. We have about the same number of students enrolled as we did last fall, which is important. We didn't know last spring and over the summer how many of our students would actually continue, but they are persevering as well. And enrollment then is actually pretty much what it was last fall. We have about 7,000 students living on campus, in campus housing, under fairly restrictive rules. And we're doing what we call asymptomatic testing of that population. We are testing all of our students regularly, regardless of whether or not they have symptoms. And the results are posted daily on our dashboard at uci.edu /coronavirus. So you can see them in real time. You'll have the same information we have. And so far, the results are really fantastic. Our students are doing a great job. Last week, we tested about 4,000 of our undergraduates. About 2 or 3 of them who live on campus tested positive. In general, we are way under 1 in every 1,000 students are testing positive. And in those rare cases, we have a system that's working very well, where those students are isolated and taken care of. The people they've been in contact with have been quarantined. It's working exactly the way it's supposed to work. If you do general routine testing and have a really good contact tracing, and isolation practice. All in all, I think that so far we've created an environment where our students can still thrive. And I think Hal's going to talk more about this in just a few minutes. Looking ahead, we expect that winter now is going to look very much like fall. Instruction will be essentially identical to what we've seen in the fall. Virtually all undergraduate courses will be remote, and the vast majority of graduate and professional courses will also be remote. Many of you are interested in when you'll be coming back to your workplaces if you have been working remotely. A while ago, we said that we expect you to continue working remotely at least through January 4th, the start of the winter quarter, and we're now in a position to ask you to continue working remotely at least until March 24th, the start of spring semester. It is possible that some individual offices may, after consultation with people in the office, begin a slow process of bringing back more in-person work, but it's not going to look fundamentally any different than what we've been experiencing in the fall. And we're constantly looking about 3 months ahead because the information and the circumstance changes so much. So we'll let you know in plenty of time if the return to work date is moved back again. The other big question, of course, I hear very often is about our financial situation and especially its impact on job security. So I don't want to underestimate the challenges we're facing, but I want to reassure you that we are in a better position to manage these challenges than most other universities. The main challenges that we have are, first, ongoing and accumulated losses in what we call auxiliary services. These are things outside the core academic budget, such as housing and dining and parking. And then some longer term concerns about the future of our core budget, especially if the state's contributions to the University of California continue to slip. On auxiliaries, we will have experienced many tens of millions of dollars in losses this past spring and this fall, and those losses will continue as long as there are restrictions on in-person activity on the campus. But we have a plan to manage those losses in a way that will require no COVID-related furloughs or layoffs within this academic year and this fiscal year. From the very beginning of the crisis, I have told you that I would be prioritizing workforce preservation. And now that we have a better understanding of this year's enrollment numbers and other aspects of our budget, I am confident that if left to our own devices, we will get through this year with no COVID-related furloughs or layoffs, and still some ability to make some modest investments in areas of strategic importance to the campus. Part of what allows us to accomplish this is the overall financial well-being of our campus, and over many years, an ability to manage our resources very well. And hats off to everyone, from the Provost office to the CFO's office to planning and budget and others, who have put us in a position to take a hit, but to manage that hit in a way that doesn't require us to overreact and still requires us to hold the community together. We have also already asked everyone to adapt to what I hope are relatively modest shared sacrifices. For example, most of you did not get a raise this year. We've made small cuts to the overall budget of most units. And we've also instigated a system of position control that ensures that we're not doing any unnecessary hiring during this period. It's very important for us to try to limit expenses as much as possible. And I want to thank you all for doing all you can to try to constrain spending and expenditures during these uncertain times. So I feel good about our ability as a campus to manage this situation, even with those challenges. Having said that, you should know that within the past few days, the Office of the President has asked campuses to collect feedback on a possible expansion of our curtailment program, but one that does have some furlough elements to it. And let me just tell you what we know. The concept, I think, would be to find about 5 extra days where all the campuses could close in the same way that we close for a few days during the winter holidays. And then there would be rules about who could cover those lost days with accrued vacation and who could not. with the lower paid workers being held essentially harmless and the highest earners being required under this proposal to essentially not work and not get paid for those days. For now, the Office of the President is simply exploring this idea in case, for example, the regents want a fair and progressive system-wide option for controlling some expenses. And we'll send more information to you about this relatively new proposal within a little bit later today. While some UC campuses believe they need such a program to help them manage their challenges, I do not think that UCI needs such a program. If the idea of such a program moves forward, I will ask that we be excluded from it. And so at the present time, I think it's unlikely that there will be a program where we have to participate in something that has elements of a furlough, a kind of a progressive furlough program. But that's ultimately going to be outside of my control, and we will all know better after the consultation process has been completed, certainly by the time of the November Regents meeting. Finally, while I'm confident that we can manage this fiscal year without any furloughs or layoffs, if we are allowed to do so, we also have to plan for the 21-22 fiscal year that starts July 1st. The state has already cut our budget by about 10%, and it's possible that additional cuts may happen. We're assuming that we may need to get some $30 or $40 million out of the general campus expense budget between this year and next year. And so we have a working group considering this in a careful and deliberate way, again, with an eye on keeping us whole and continuing to move us forward. There are many uncertainties about this, about next year's budget. For example, will the states receive stronger federal support sometime in the next few weeks or months so that they don't have to cut their budget so much? What will be the state of economic activity in California in the spring? We just don't know. But we have always been an institution that has weathered these challenges because of our careful and deliberate planning. And if we get things right this year, it will put us in a very strong position next year, even if we face some additional challenges. So I know you have some questions. We'll get to them pretty soon. That's a broad overview of where we are. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And Hal, back to you.
Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you for touching on all those topics. I'm going to take just a few minutes to add some details in some of those instances. I see a number of questions already about testing on campus. So let me first talk about that. As the Chancellor mentioned, we have an asymptomatic testing program. Of course, we're also doing symptomatic testing. So in brief, everyone is getting a symptom check email or from the app every day. Those that answer yes get followed up with from Student Health in the case of our students, and from the Center for Occupational and Environmental Health for faculty and staff. There's some conversation that happens, and then those that ought to be tested are tested. So that's the symptomatic testing. Asymptomatic testing is something that we actually ramped up somewhat late in the game. We were not originally planning to do that. And then as we saw what was happening on other campuses, learning what the best practices were, realized that that was an important part of keeping the community safe. So we are still trying to build up capacity there. We are using UCI Medical Center to do our testing currently, to do PCR testing. We are popping up a lab on campus that will do saliva testing for those who have been reading about all these things. And the saliva testing lab it's in place, and they're doing the assays, testing it on positive and negative controls and the like. Not quite ready yet to help us, so we're still relying on nasal swabs and PCR. Our current plan, while capacity is limited, is we are testing undergraduate students and graduate students that are resident on campus. The first couple of weeks of the quarter, we tested undergraduates during week 1 and graduate students in week 2, which is now. Starting next week, we intend to do the undergraduates every week from that point forward. Graduate students, again, partly a function of capacity. People are asking very good questions in the chat. There are questions we are talking about literally on a daily basis. That is, there's a recognition that we have people living off campus that are coming to campus. That's a high priority group for us to add. Faculty and staff not currently being asymptomatically tested, another high priority group. Our plan, when we have capacity up a little bit, is to do a sweep of all the faculty and staff that are coming to campus so they get tested once, and then do random sampling, which is what's happening at some of the other campuses and on our health center campus. So these are, and a further group is, we know we have a lot of students living across the street and other places nearby. Even if they're not coming to campus regularly, we're thinking about perhaps some random sampling of that population as well. So we appreciate everyone's interest in that. And it is a lot of attention and a lot of credit to a lot of people on campus for getting us in a position to do asymptomatic testing really well using our resources. One other piece of the fall story, Chancellor mentioned contact tracing. Very, very important. We signed a memorandum of understanding with Orange County, the first UC campus to make that kind of arrangement. So we are doing contact tracing on their behalf in our community. And we hired someone who used to be high up at Orange County Health to lead our COVID response. And so he's leading the contact tracing effort. Something everyone should understand is when someone tests positive, obviously they're entitled to privacy. So we don't publicize cases. If you become aware of a case in your building, lab, unit, whatever, the contact tracing is our response. That is, individual labs don't need to come up with responses. The cases are spoken to, contacts identified, people who spend more than 15 minutes near someone who tested positive. And so all that we ask is that everyone work with our contact tracing and have confidence in our contact tracing. So that's kind of in the fall. The only other thing I'll add is in terms of the budget. I think the Chancellor did a great job of describing it, including the President's call for information about the curtailment program. Chancellor mentioned we have a budget work group that's been active for a few months as we watch to see what enrollment would look like, what the magnitude of the problem is. And we are, again, to some extent, as we speak, rolling out a group of subcommittees to look at different aspects of life on campus and look for places where we can either find budget savings or potentially increased revenues in some parts of our model to put us in position for the 21-22 academic year. So let me stop my remarks there. We're really grateful to the Academic Senate and the Staff Assembly for partnering with us on this town hall. And so let me invite the chair of the Academic Senate, Jeff Barrett, to say a few words.
Thanks, Hal. Just a few brief notes. I'm pleased to join all of us here as a community. Very briefly, with respect to the proposed system-wide expanded or extended curtailment that Chancellor Gillman mentioned. We strongly support our colleagues across the UC system, clearly. And on this campus, I'm pleased that we are in a position where we've planned well and effectively. And my own sense is that that the right way to go on this is to allow campuses the flexibility to address the issue locally. And I think if we're given that flexibility, we're going to be in really good shape this year. I'm relatively optimistic longer term. The campus has been working extraordinarily hard to address the pandemic. And this is from departments, schools, the administration, academic senate. I'm proud to be surrounded by such industriousness. I think we've also been working smart. How smart we've been will play out over the next 2 or 3 years. The proof will be in how well we can manage the issues that come up in real time. And we're evolving practices. And I think that's the best that we can do is we evolve the practices locally to address the problems that we're facing. We keep an eye to the future. We try to stay nimble and flexible. We're faced with a number of subtle challenges. And I'll just to give an example, I'll mention one cluster. With respect to our teaching, we are trying our best. The faculty have been working hard to soften the impact of the pandemic on our students. This is what we do. We care about our students. We're in service of our students. We want them to be maximally successful. One way that we've tried to soften the impact of the pandemic on the students is by providing more open course materials, providing asynchronous instruction when we can. I'm doing the poor man's version of this. I've been lecturing on Zoom, recording the lectures and providing those to the students. But there's a balance and there's a cost. The more open the material is that we provide to the students, it makes it harder to preserve the fairness and integrity of the courses we teach. And that requires more work on our part. By opening up this material, it opens up opportunities for folks like Course Hero. We need to rewrite our exams. We need to be conscientious. We need to look at issues of fairness with respect to our students and accessibility and make sure that our courses retain their integrity. Another way we've tried to be flexible is by increasing our flexibility with respect to how students satisfy course requirements. But again, this is a balance with issues of fairness and practicality. We need to balance, we need to make sure that we are still teaching effectively. Now, for my own part, I don't think these are new issues. This is part of our business. We've always been in a position when we're teaching where we're balancing issues of fairness, practicality against issues of flexibility and openness. And so I don't think we need new principles, but we need to take our values and our principles and apply them here carefully and reflectively and evolve up practices that work for these times. It's my pleasure to be working with all of you on this project. And I'm optimistic that we will together be able to evolve practices that in many ways land us better than we were before, and because of the stuff we've learned along the way. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Next, I'd like to ask the Staff Assembly Chair, Connie Cheng, to say a few words. Thanks, Connie.
Thank you, Hal. I am Connie Cheng, Chair of Staff Assembly, and I'd like to provide some updates on some much-loved Staff Assembly events we have either had to cancel, postpone, or offer in a virtual format. We also have some new and exciting events and series I will share with you all today. Since we are currently in the middle of Staff Appreciation Week, I want to first provide an update on our two large staff appreciation events. We had to cancel the breakfast that was to take place in March and the beloved picnic this past August. Our Staff Appreciation Committee, led by Joni Harrington, has been busy at work planning for events to honor our hardworking staff and accounting for various scenarios when we return to campus. If you haven't already, please consider joining a team for the virtual scavenger hunt taking place right now, and get your costumes ready for the annual Halloween costume contest coming later this month. Earlier this year, we offered for the very first time 4 virtual Lunch with Leadership events during the summer. These were popular events while we were on campus, and while we cannot provide lunch for you in person, please feel free to join us on your lunch break to hear from some excellent leaders on campus. Our special programs chairs, Carissa Sorensen and Nancy Palmer, will continue to bring Lunch with Leadership events to the campus this fall and throughout the academic year in the virtual format. All events will be recorded and posted on our website in case you are unable to attend the event live. A new offering is a how-to series led by Community Relations Chairs Alice Han and Fong Luong that will kick off on October 22nd with a demonstration on how to create your own mask with a clear face covering for those who work with or interact with individuals who lip read. Our Education and Enrichment Committee chairs, Kathy Yates and Camber Lamoureux, have prepared some well-being sessions on mindfulness and nutrition presented by the Susan Samueli Integrative Health Institute, since we can all use a little extra self-care during these times. I am personally looking forward to the workshop on feng shui for your home office, offered by Environmental Health and Safety, so we can all maximize our spaces and enhance our productivity. Now is an excellent time to learn some extra skills. Led by Sandy Lee and Gretchen Verdugo, our Mike Parrott's Staff Assembly Career Enhancement Scholarship Program will continue to invest in eligible staff through scholarship awards. Applications will be available during the spring. Our two Council of UC Staff Assembly delegates, Lou Gill and Jeremy Thacker, meet quarterly with other representatives across the UC and serve on work groups such as staff compensation and flexible work arrangements. If you have feedback you'd like to provide, please contact them directly or use the Contact Us form on our website. Lastly, we have created the new Special Committee on Campus Culture to address the evolving needs of staff, with the current focus on the racial climate our campus and the nation has grappled with for many years, but was especially heightened in recent months. Please keep an eye out for more information on resources and action steps you can take, as well as details for our kickoff event taking place early November. As you can see, though we may be working from home, Staff Assembly is not slowing down. Please review our monthly newsletters or visit our website, staffassembly.uci.edu, for more information on upcoming events or to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. So that brings us to the main purpose of the town hall, to get your questions answered. To do that, we have several other people on the panel. So let me introduce them and then get to some of your questions. So we're joined by Ron Cortez, the Chief Financial Officer and the Vice Chancellor for the Division of Finance and Administration. We're also joined by Ramona Agrella, Associate Chancellor and Chief Human Resource Executive. Diane O'Dowd, the Vice Provost for Academic Personnel. Willie Banks, the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. And Bernadette Bowden-Alala, the Director of our program Public Health, to be founding Dean of our School of Population and Public Health. And I'm grateful to all of them for being here. We also had hoped to have Pramod Karganagar here, but he was not able to join us. So there are some questions on research, and I'll start by addressing those and making a few remarks about questions I see on fall, related to fall, winter, et cetera. So with respect to fall and winter, a couple of people have asked important questions. Chancellor mentioned the winter will look like the fall, and someone asked if the students know that yet. I'm not sure they do, but they will be messaged any day. That is, we are working on a message to the students and to their families as well, what the model is for the winter. We are not making comments about the spring yet. The situation is just changing too quickly for that. Someone also asked about Thanksgiving. We are messaging to the students that if they choose to go home for Thanksgiving, they should plan to stay home for the rest of the quarter and complete the quarter remotely. If students choose to go home for Thanksgiving and return, we're going to basically have them follow the same protocol they had when they moved to campus, which is they'll need to sequester in their rooms and really leave only for essential items. So that's our plan for doing that. And we'll also be messaging that to the families so that they know if their students are coming home, that they should stay home. With respect to research, as everyone knows, we ramped down in March, and in June, started up again with approximately 30% or less capacity in research labs and strict guidelines. That's gone really well. The Vice Chancellor for Research here and with the other campuses are in conversations about ramping up a little bit. I think the quarter campuses have all kind of agreed to give it 2 or 3 weeks to see how we do, what transmission in the community looks like, and how the processes and programs that we put in place on campus are working. And so there's some possibility that we will increase that. The message of the day for all of us has been flexibility, and that will continue to be the case. The research operations also need to think carefully about Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday. That is, as people are traveling to spend time with family, they'll need to kind of stay out of the lab for a while until they, self-quarantine, if you will. So we do hope to get the research slowly moving up, but we will be very careful about that. I saw some questions about the human resource related topics, vacation renewal, early retirement, and telecommuting. So let me ask Ramona to address some of those.
Happy to do that, Hal. So first, with regard to the vacation accrual, many of you know we are on a vacation max holiday for right now. That has been offered by the Office of the President and is intended to go through the end of December. That's essentially where there's no longer a cap on the number of vacation days you can accrue. That actually is being evaluated right now. There is a proposal that will be put on the President's desk to expand that holiday through the end of June. Don't have any information on that yet, but that is the proposal, is to extend that vacation max holiday through June. And then what that will mean is for those folks who accrued above their max at June 30th, the max will go back in place, and any of the hours that you've accrued above that will stay in place. You just will not be allowed to accrue any additional vacation until you use it back down to the max. As I saw a lot of comments about the early retirement incentive, and many of you who have been here for a long time know that we used to do that in the past. VERIP might be a term that comes to some people's minds. That was something that the Office of the President did evaluate early on in this process, but given the financial situation and the constraints on our retirement plan, there will not be, at least not right now, an option for early retirement program. I think they're probably always still going to be looking at that question, but as of right now, that is not an option. Remote work and telecommuting, we have been very successful. And I applaud everyone for, we were told to go remote work without very little warning, and we did this incredibly well, incredibly quickly. Kudos to all of you and to your leaders for adjusting to an unprecedented environment. And we have done so successfully. Lots of units have embraced the telecommuting, the remote work environment, and are really doing an awesome job in making that work for their organization. There are plans, we will go, as the Chancellor mentioned in his remarks, we will continue for the most part to continue that remote work environment through the winter quarter. And there will be some units and some individuals that will be asked to come back on staff just because of the work and the nature of their work. But for the most of us, we will be remote working through the winter quarter. Now, will we extend it beyond this? Let's say the pandemic finally goes away. We can hope for that, right? We can look for that in the future. Are we going to then be remote working permanently? I think it's a possibility. I think it's absolutely a possibility. HR is working with the Office of the President and our sister campuses to look at how we might do this as a permanent fixture as part of our new work environment. So more to come on that. I know that there are some units that are already embracing it, moving forward. We want to encourage that. And if it works for your unit and it works for you personally, we think that's a good solution. So more to come on that, but I think that is something definitely out there in our future. And if there's something specific I'm missing, Hal.
No, I think you hit the items that I had seen. Thank you, Ramona.
Thank you.
A question for Willie Banks from Student Affairs. It's a question about what spaces are open for students outside of their dorm rooms. Do they have study spaces? What is the status of the ARC? Some things like that. So maybe you can update us.
Sure, thanks for that question, Hal. And thank you for asking that question. For our students, the ARC is open on a limited basis and it's mainly for outdoor activities. If you actually go to the ARC website, they're actually requesting students to actually make reservations for 48 hours in advance. And so they have opened up the swimming pool, and there's also a weight room that has been moved outside for people to take advantage of, and also the tennis courts are also open. So right now those are the only spaces that are open. We are looking at the possibility of possibly expanding services in the ARC, but we're in the process of discussing that with campus leadership on that piece. There are study spaces available around the library and throughout campus. You will notice that there are some tents. I will go ahead and mention that there's one at the Humanities Plaza that has a tent available, and then also with tables and chairs that are socially distanced. And then also the Wi-Fi has been improved for certain areas across campus. So there are spaces across campus for students to leave their residence hall room. We are encouraging our students that if they do leave, to continue to wear their face coverings, to be socially distanced, to continue to hand sanitize and those things. And then also just to make sure that they're traveling with their pod if possible. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. And there are a few dining retail operations open. The BioSci Starbucks is open for business. And I don't know that they're having a lot of people just because the density of campus is not that great, but that is one of the locations that is open for our students. And for dining for our students, it's all grab and go.
Thank you, Willie. Let me throw in answers to a few more testing questions that have popped up. One of which is people have identified a variety of populations. As I mentioned, we are still trying to increase the capacity we have to do testing. So some of the groups that people are asking about, essential workers that are interacting with students in housing and dining, very high priority for us. As are the students, as I mentioned, who are off campus but coming to campus. For those who are off campus, faculty, staff, students, if we do anything, it will most likely be random sampling and not by volunteer. So that's one set of questions. Another set of questions, there are some questions in the Q&A about the president's raising the possibility of a curtailment program. And I don't really want to use our time here to go into the details of that. We'll be sending out some information about that we have from the president. We will be asking people to send input back to us so that we can collect it and share with the president. No decisions have been made about it. And so it's a little premature and probably not the best use of our time. Ron, there's a question about air conditioning and air transmission. And I know that the facilities and environmental folks are under you. I don't know if you want to comment on some of the things we've done to address that.
Sure. Thank you, Hal. That's a really good question. So our facility staff have been reviewing all the buildings that we have and that are being occupied for both aerosol and droplet-based transmission. And so as many of we've heard a lot recently about aerosol transmission. And one of the things that facilities is doing to ensure the safety of our inhabitants is all those buildings on campus we're utilizing 100% outside air, and we're not reusing the air like we normally have done before. Before that was more of a sustainability issue, but now since the time that this came about, we've now changed our practices. And there's a number of other things that we're doing to ensure the safety of faculty, staff, and students. And we have a very rigorous program in which departments are required to submit plans. These plans are then reviewed by a campus response implementation team, and they go through all the different aspects of the plan, together commenting on it. And then we have a review of each of those plans by the senior leadership. We also make sure, I know this wasn't asked, but I wanted to ensure there's all sorts of supplies that are available for people, for disinfectants that are available. And we've also gone through every one of the different classrooms that is that are out there. We selected the buildings that would be best for the safety. And also we ensure that there's proper distancing. We have made sure that we've closed off the use of certain seats. We make sure that there's spacing marked off so that they can't be used. And then so that's some of the other things that we've done as well to mitigate the risk for the aerosol exposure, as well as the droplet exposure, which is the typical 6 feet, and keep the social distancing as well.
Thank you, Ron.
I think that's it, Hal. Thank you.
So a few questions are coming in about, for lack of a better word, I'll say compliance with the various executive directives, mandates, training, and the like. We're cognizant of this. We are working on it. There was conversation yesterday on our compliance and risk committee that I co-chair with Kirsten Kwambek. We're going to start to do a little bit more messaging to unit leaders about who in their units is completing, for example, the back to work training, and do some outreach there. And so try to encourage more top-down feedback to people. Someone asked about reporting community members or students that are violating COVID policies. What is the right way to do that? Ramona or Willie, do you know?
Sure. For student cases, we're directing people to actually go to the student conduct website, and we can put that website up there for student-related issues. But I also believe that off of the landing page for the coronavirus website for for the university, there should be some links to report that. That's at least for the students. I'll turn it over to Ramona to address anything related to staff.
Yes, for staff, any issues regarding the coronavirus can be referred to our coronavirus response line. It's extension 9918. Feel free to send any questions, comments, any concerns you have. Just go ahead and call that line and we'll be happy to help you. 9918.
Great. Thank you, Ramona. And thank you, Willie. So Ramona, another question that came up a couple of times is whether people can donate sick days and how that might work if they want to help their peers.
I love that question. Thank you so much for showing your compassion to your fellow colleagues. Unfortunately, you cannot donate your sick leave right now, but you can donate vacation. So you can donate it to an employee that you know is in need, or you can donate it to the catastrophic leave bank. We're always looking for donations. We know that our colleagues are suffering inequitably in this time. So anything, if you want to give some vacation time, we're happy to accept those through the catastrophic leave donation program.
Great. Couple of questions about how students are adapting to the environment. I'll just make a couple of comments. People are asking about instruction. So as the Chancellor mentioned, the in-class undergraduates, a very small number of classes, it's under 20. There's some upper division labs, some field classes for classes that need to be in person for some fields like nursing and the like. And we expect that to continue into the winter. There are more graduate courses meeting in person. Everything we understand is all of that is going very well. A few people ask about the mental health of our students, and I really appreciate that. That is a very real concern of ours. Though remote instruction poses a lot of challenges, the number one thing that we have heard from students when they were been asked questions is it's the isolation and the inability to really connect as much as they love faculty and staff with each other is something that they miss. And so the student affairs team is working closely with the students to create opportunities. Willie, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Sure. No, I think that's a great comment, Hal, and thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things for folks to understand is that we're trying to create community. And even through this virtual environment, I have been really pleased with our students, and it just reminds me of why this place is so special. I will share with this group that we hosted the All-U Leadership Conference, which is an annual conference for student leaders. And just to share with this group, we had over 190 students participate in the conference that started last Friday night and went into Saturday. So if you can imagine 190 students that were actively engaged, and for 2 or 3 hours on a Friday night, that speaks a lot of the types of students that we have here, and also their commitment to UCI and also their learning. So I just want to say that we're trying to create as many possibilities as opportunities as possible. Our resource centers are providing opportunities for our students to connect with other students, but then also our staff, and then also our counseling center, and also our Office of Social Work, our Fresh Hub. All of those offices are seeing record numbers of students participating and also reaching out for services and help. I think the other piece that I do want to share on the flip side of that is that there has to be special attention paid to our staff that are working in those areas, and making sure that they're doing okay, because our students are coming forward and asking for a lot of help, and they're looking for assistance. But I think it's important that we also focus on our staff that are staffing those areas and making sure that they're getting the support that they need. So the mental health piece is an important piece of this. We understand it, and I understand that everyone's concerned. I will do a plug. I'm working with HR next week. I'm doing a session on working from home remotely, and so I'm sure we'll address some of the issues around mental health issues for staff. So make sure you look for that next week. So Ramona, I hope that's okay for me to plug that little workshop next week.
Thanks, Willie. Diane, there's a question about what we're doing especially for junior faculty with regard to merit and tenure review.
Yeah, thank you, Hal. So there are a few things that we have done. One is that we put in place quite rapidly a COVID Stop the Clock program. So individuals could delay their tenure review or their mid-career review by a year. We are going to announce, or we are announcing that there will also, if an individual does take the COVID Stop the Clock, and when they get promoted, either to security of employment or tenure, then we will provide the pay retroactive to the previous year to minimize some of the financial consequences. We also have a program called Interim COVID Modified Duties, which is now out for comment right now. We hope to have this program up to the office of the UCOP Provost, and this will allow faculty, assistant professors to ask their chairs and deans for course release in one quarter, starting winter quarter 21 up through spring 22, which would allow them to focus entirely for that quarter on their research activities, so get relief from teaching, in order to address the dependent care responsibilities additional responsibilities that they had during this COVID time. So even if schools go back to full in session, there was still disruption that occurred to their scholarly work that we hope that this program will help address. We have also sent out to all the chairs language for external letter writers who are going to be making comments on or recommendations on our faculty going up for review, to tell them what has happened here at Irvine, as at many places, in terms of closure of research spaces and the campus, rapid return to rapid move to online teaching that could have negatively impacted their ability to do their scholarly work. And so that work should be evaluated in that context.
Great, thank you, Diane. So a few questions about shots, flu shots, vaccine shots. So let me first ask Ramona to make a few comments about the flu shot. Are people who are working from home, can they get an exemption without going through the exemption policy? Is there any further update on the flu shot requirement?
We have not received any extension from the Office of the President with regard to the deadline for the flu shots. As you know, the requirement is to get your flu shot by November 1st. However, we're really monitoring those for people who are returning on site. So if you're not going to be returning on site and you haven't had an opportunity to get your flu shot yet, you don't need to worry. You're not necessarily out of compliance. However, if you do need to come on site, even if it's just to pick up your mail or to pick up some equipment or something like that, you will need to have your flu shot. So for those who are 100% remote, you're okay until you have to come back to on site. Then we will check to make sure you've had your flu shot. For those of you that have already taken your flu shot, thank you for doing that. We appreciate your taking care of yourself and your community.
Thanks, Ramona. And Bernadette, do you want to give a little update on what you know about COVID vaccines and where we're at and timing?
Yeah, so I'm sitting on the Orange County Healthcare Agency Vaccine Task Force. I think that we were all hoping there would be a COVID vaccine end of this year. I think what we're now thinking is, or we're now hearing, is probably March, April. There are priorities in terms of who will be first to get said vaccines, and that will probably end up being nursing home, elderly, and then healthcare workers. And so most of us at the university are down probably a number of levels. So I think we still have to remain vigilant. Getting flu vaccination is one really positive thing to do, given the concern about the intersection of COVID and the flu this year. And, I think we just have to wait and see. There's nothing approved, and there's still a lot of discussion about what kind of immunological response people really have from exposure. And I did see one question, so I'll just throw it out. The Orange County Healthcare Surveillance Study looking at antibody prevalence in Orange County is in preprint now, so it's in MedRx. The prevalence, we found that the prevalence of exposure to COVID at about 12% for the county overall, which is higher than most people had anticipated. And in high-risk populations, Latinx populations, upwards of 17%. And again, it's preprint, hoping to get accepted into a journal. Any other questions, Hal?
No, I think that's it for now. Thank you, Bernadette. I see a few questions asking about the winter break, especially and so for the moment, where we're at is the winter break and the winter curtailment period that we've always had. This is the part that the Chancellor mentioned at the start. There's some conversation about adding curtailment days through a program, but we don't know that is happening. We don't know what that will look like. So I can't really say more than that. Right now, it's just the same plan for the winter. A few questions about people who are working from home, expenses that they're accruing, maybe some challenges, and wanting to know about some of the financial aspects of that. Ramona, can you comment on that?
Absolutely, thank you. Again, we know it's been challenging to work remotely, and you all did it with just in the blink of an eye. What we'd like you to do if you have some challenges is to work with your leader and your supervisor. In most cases, you could take some of your equipment from your office. We've had people take their chairs, we've had people take their computers, monitors, all those things are acceptable. You just need to check with your supervisor first. We don't want you to get stopped by UCI PD because you're carrying a laptop or something under your arm. So just make sure you follow all the proper procedures, but you can take your equipment from the office to your home. Additionally, if you've had to buy something, a cell phone or Wi-Fi or any of those other issues, we do have a policy in place to review those expenses. Thanks to DFA, it's on their website. Those can be reimbursable to a certain extent. We just have to follow the guidelines. Additionally, if you're buying equipment, equipment is reimbursable if it will come back to the office. So if you're going to buy something that you're using in your home office that will then come back to your work office, then those are permissible as well. But that's just a high level overview. I encourage you to check with your supervisor and also to check that website. And again, I don't know if Ron wants to elaborate, but there's more information on the DFA website.
Ramona, I think you covered it. Yeah, there is a form to fill out to loan equipment. I'll actually put, is it possible, Hal, for me to cut and paste the link to the DFA website? It actually answers. There's a number of questions I see on the questions regarding this issue, and this link will answer maybe a great portion of them. Can I cut and paste and put that up here somewhere?
Ron, you should be able to put in the chat something that will be seen by all panelists and attendees. So
okay,
put that in and choose that.
I will do that. I'll put the link on there so they can go in, and many of the questions that are being asked will be answered through those links. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Ramona. Chancellor, I don't know if you want to comment. There are a few questions about events as the campaign, I would say, events like commencement, and also athletics.
Yes, events. I mean, we've, Bernadette and I were talking earlier about how she came last year and she loved convocation and was so looking forward to graduation. And then she's missed out both on graduation, and this year's convocation, of course, was a nice event, and Student Affairs did a tremendous job, but it's very difficult under these circumstances to imagine that we're going to be doing events that really bring people together. We can hope that by the time we get to graduation, that we can imagine a slightly different world. But it's very hard for me to see now that we can promise that one way or the other. And so, you know, I want to remain optimistic, but also realistic. And, you know, hopefully every few months, we're letting you know what we think the next few months are going to be like, and we'll keep updating you. We do have a campaign. We're still very excited about the campaign. We're not doing big gatherings of people, but relationships are still being developed. Conversations are happening. There was a campaign update, actually. The Brilliant Future campaign update. There was a video and a campaign report that was circulated just in the last week. And if you go to the Brilliant Future website, you can see some of what has been happening lately. And I'll say there's nothing that proves the case of the value of our work more than the work that we've collectively been doing at a time when the world needs more than ever reliable advice, you know, expert knowledge, and a real commitment to serving the people. So the campaign is continuing to develop. Conversations are still happening, but big gatherings aren't happening. As for sports, we are being very careful. There is going to be a question figured out over the next couple of weeks about whether we want to start any of the so-called winter sports and set those in motion, with the most likely candidate being basketball. We were, not only as a campus, but as a Big West conference, made the decision that the fall sports certainly just could not get started under the circumstances. We're going to see whether there is a mechanism of testing and contact tracing and podding for basketball that may allow the conference to feel comfortable putting together a limited schedule. That decision hasn't been made, although the conference is going to be meeting over the next week or so to assess that. And if you can begin imagining that some things could happen under very strict rules with you know, best practices on testing especially, then you can start imagining what else might happen with respect to athletics. I wouldn't expect, unfortunately, though, imagining that we're all going to be gathering in the Bren watching the basketball team or the volleyball team anytime soon. You know, we really want to make sure that we don't start anything too quickly and then have to begin to pull back. So we may see whether there's comfort within the entire conference about basketball, and we'll know more about that probably within the next 2 weeks.
Great, thank you, Chancellor. One other, I guess, related topic I see just popped up in the question, which is protest around the election. So we are definitely trying to plan in advance for those kinds of issues. There's a team led by Student Affairs that is meeting, that is coming up with approaches, and we've already had protests independently on other subjects, so have some experience with protests in a COVID environment. But so we're definitely paying close attention to that. Diane, a couple of questions about the modified duties, whether they applies to assistants or professors only or others who may have childcare challenges. And also a question about some of the timing for some of the programs. That is, some like the medical leave was just for this fall, but EFML and others. Can you talk to those two questions?
Sure. The EFML, as mandated, that it's a federal program, that was only through December of this year, and I have not heard any talk about it being extended. The emergency medical leave and sick leave, also there, I was just on a vice provost meeting where there was some talk about whether that might be extended into winter and spring, and I don't think any decision has been made on that one yet. As far as the interim COVID modified duties, right now, we, again, it's out for comment right now, so we're taking information in, but we have it focused on assistant professors, not because there aren't other people that might also had their scholarship disrupted, but this is a particularly vulnerable population, and we are providing some funding for it, and we don't have unlimited amounts of funding, so we want to target it toward our assistant professors. If there are, particular exceptions that arise that are important to address, this should be, it's a program that's going to work through the chairs and the deans. I think that addresses those questions.
Yes, great. Thank you, Diane. Question, I think Ramona is probably best suited to answer a couple of questions about open enrollment. Is that going as planned?
Yes, I saw those. Yeah, absolutely. Enrollment is going as planned this year. You will soon be getting an announcement. Open enrollment opens October 29th and it goes through November 24th, 5 p.m. Sometimes we think it's midnight, but no, it's 5 p.m. on November 24th. We encourage everybody, this is going to be done through UC Path this year instead of at your service, so keep that in mind as well. And because this is our first time using UC Path for open enrollment, please go early. Please do it early, and it takes 24 hours for the system to update. So you won't want to check back after 24 hours, but go in early. Again, opens October 29th. And everything is exactly the same as it was. We'll get more information about any benefit changes, but I don't anticipate there is anything significant coming down the pike.
Great, thank you. So let's see, there's been questions about PPE for essential workers. Will there be another donation drive? I don't believe that's a current issue, but it's something we monitor closely. And for example, in the context of the testing work that we're doing, it appears that there's a shortage of ethanol. So there may well be messaging out to campus labs or those of you who have stills at home to supply ethanol. So thank you for asking. We appreciate that, and we're working on that. Someone asked about campus building plans, Ron. Will we recognize campus when we return? So can you give us an update on the kinds of ththings that are happening?
Sure, I certainly can. Construction on campus is still taking place for a number of projects. The College of Health Sciences and the School of Nursing project began construction within the maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago. So that's off and running. You'll see that on Bison in California. And in the other project, which is good news, is the Verano 8 project, the graduate student housing, which is going to provide 1,000 additional beds for graduate students, is also started about 4 to 6 weeks ago. So if you're around campus, you'd be seeing a lot of construction, vehicles. Right now they're hauling a lot of dirt for the foundation, et cetera. So those are still moving forward, and we're still progressing with the plans for the for North Campus and Campus and Jamboree, for the medical center and the I still call it the Children's Health Medical Office building, but I guess it's the advanced care. And those projects are all moving forward in planning. We did put a couple of projects on hold with the Chancellor reviewing the our budget. And so one of them is the Key East Campus Phase 4B project was put on hold. till we can sort of see what the demand and how it will impact our finances, as well as the student success building too is on hold. We just call them on pause for now, so we were really concerned, as the Chancellor mentioned, what this fall would look like. And really just like a week or two ago, we figured out it's not as bad as we had originally planned, but we wanted to stay in front of this and put those on pause. And probably after this, we'll be revisiting those with the Chancellor again to see what he would like to do. So I think in summary, how we're moving forward on as many projects as we can. As far as like deferred maintenance projects, et cetera, if they're health and safety related or they're faculty related, those are still moving forward. If they were more elective, we put some of those on pause just so we can see what this fall looks like. So I hope, is that helpful, Hal?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Ron.
Okay, great.
So a few questions about the budget work group that the Chancellor and I both mentioned, and where they're going, and some helpful ideas. And I should have said that earlier. We welcome ideas that people have for, in the case of revenue. I think someone in the Q&A talked about whether we might be able to use some of the remote instruction and online courses that have been developed historically to increase enrollment in some way, shape, or form. And that's certainly one of the topics that we're considering. In terms of the other kinds of things that the budget work group is looking at, we think about things like space utilization. In fact, Ramona earlier discussed telecommuting and how that might work. We already have a pilot planned in the Office of Information Technology, where they'll set up a stop-in space where people who are choosing to work majority remote can come in for the day as they need to. And so that creates efficient space. And they are a group that was scheduled to start a new lease in November, and we're going to not do that lease. And so that's a potentially important source for us, is if we can use space more efficiently. I think I also saw this conversation in the Q&A about travel and meals and things like that are not happening as much, and there are savings there, and they've been helpful, obviously. As we look at the state budget cut, a challenge for us is that's a permanent cut and not a temporary COVID cut. So the travel savings are temporary and they're definitely helpful. But the budget work group will have to be focusing on the kinds of things we can do. We're looking at academic planning. That is, we have an ambitious strategic plan. We don't want to stop it, but we do need to slow it. Faculty hiring for the current cycle, 2021, is we authorized a number of recruitments that are basically at replacement level. That is, we have a pretty good idea of the number of faculty who leave on a year-to-year basis. We've been growing, so we've been recruiting above and beyond that. But for this year, the plan is to try and aim to recruit at replacement level, so we don't increase budget. So those are kind of the things that we are looking at on the budget side. Ramona, maybe I could ask you to say a couple of things about childcare. In particular, I saw a couple of questions about the dependent care FSA and people who have not been able to use up their 2020 allocation because of childcare closures and the like, whether there have been any changes in that policy at the federal level or anything that you're aware of. And any other updates about childcare. Maybe Willie, you can also step in there.
Absolutely, on the FSA. So for those of you who participate in the FSA, you know that early on during the COVID crisis, we were allowed to stop our withdrawals, and many of you still have a balance in that. You have until March 15th. You can submit expenses through March 15th, and you have until April 15th to do so. So it's a little confusing, so let me say it again. You can submit expenses all the way through March 15th for your FSA account, and you have until April 15th of 2021 to do so. So that is currently the practice. We are hoping to get some legislation out through the federal government that will give us another holiday or another reprieve, but we're not aware of anything immediate. So for right now, the way the program works is you can continue to submit your expenses through March 15th, 2021, and you have until April 15th, 21 to do that. And then Willie, I'll let you talk about the Child Care Center.
Sure. The Child Care Center did reopen, and I think it's important to understand that they actually had to cut their actual enrollment. So the number of children that they could actually enroll in the child care program was cut because of the COVID and also the regulations from the state. So my advice to anyone asking about specifically for childcare, if they're going to open up enrollment, is to contact Child Care Services directly to ask that question, because I know that they have had to cut their enrollment almost in half. So I know that's affecting a lot of people, and I'm not sure when that number will increase, just based off of the guidance from the state and then also just COVID restrictions.
And if I can just piggyback on that a little bit, we will be unveiling a new website next week to help individuals who are struggling with childcare issues, where they can find resources. We also have emergency backup childcare program that we're working on unveiling too, that will be coming out shortly as well. So more information we'll send out as Zotmail once those programs are launched, but just to know, we do have some resources that we'll be making available shortly to help those who need it.
Yep, thank you, Ramona, for addressing that. A couple of questions about whether a COVID vaccine, when it comes, will be mandatory for coming back to campus. Chancellor, I don't know, has that been discussed? Do you know? Or?
Specifically, it hasn't been discussed. But if and I'll let Bernadette weigh in. It would be hard for me to imagine that it wouldn't be required. You first have to find out, though, what is the nature of the vaccine? How well is it performing? It's not as if there's a vaccine and every single vaccine works in exactly the same way. And how much you require it and what conditions for coming back to campus might be depends as much on the timing of the vaccine and how efficacious it is and how safe it is as it depends on anything else. You know, just more generally, we see how vitally important using vaccines is to the general well-being of the campus. I mean, if we had this situation where more people were interacting on campus and we were managing COVID and people were coming on campus without a flu vaccine, and on top of everything, were contracting flu, our ability to manage the COVID problem by also having to distinguish flu versus COVID would just be incredibly difficult. It would be almost impossible, especially if a lot of the activity is triggered by symptoms that are very common in many circumstances. So I think as long as these vaccines are proven and helpful and recommended by public health, that we're going to try to continue to adopt, we will continue to adopt best practices. And Bernadette, I don't know if I missed anything about that, or you could also correct any of the mistakes in what I said, but it seems likely to me that that's probably how we're going to think about it.
I think that was perfectly answered, Chancellor. The only other thing we would say is what's happening with the virus at the time at which we have a flu vaccine. You know, has the virus, the potency and transmissibility, has it changed a little bit or not? But absolutely right. I think it's still too early, but you know, with all of what you said, I think that those are the considerations.
Great, thank you. Let me comment on a couple of the items that I saw go by. One is graduate student and the guest policy in graduate and family housing, which is a topic we've actually spent a lot of time on, and I think the question acknowledges. So we changed the policy to allow for essential visitors, that is care providers, child care providers, or to come into people's homes, and for children who are sharing childcare, for the children to be able to move. We continue to believe that for public health reasons, social guests are not appropriate in the units. We definitely recognize the challenge that faces. This is something we're all facing in our own ways, and we have one advantage, obviously being in Southern California, which is to take advantage of the outdoor space and get together with people. I have a daughter who is in graduate school at another university, and that is same requirements. That's how students are trying to address it, get together 6 feet apart with masks, but have a chance to socialize in that way. So thank you for asking about that. saw a recent question about undergraduate and graduate admissions requirements. I think most everyone knows the SATs were first change that happened was for the current cycle, given the challenge students had taking SATs were made optional. But then the Office of the President and all the campuses came up with a plan for how to wean ourselves off of SATs. There's now a ruling that we can't use them at all. But for UCI, which is the only thing most important to all of us, we had already made the decision not to use SATs for any purpose moving forward. So we're not impacted by some of the legal back and forth that's happening in that space. GREs, I think, still remain a point of discussion, some variation program by program. Jeff, I don't know if you have any additional insight on that.
This is, as Hal is saying, this is something that's program by program. This is one of the places, both at the undergraduate level and the graduate level, where we're going to have to evolve our practices. With less information, admissions becomes a trickier enterprise. But the campus is working hard to do the right thing here. And we're knee deep in it. It's come up in a number of meetings this week concerning what our best practices should be, and we're trying to hammer them out.
Great, thank you, Jeff. A couple of other vaccine-related questions. Someone asked how many vaccines is it safe to take in the same 6-month period. I think it's part of a very large conversation at the national level of the way that we're pursuing this is a large number of parallel trials. And so there's not really head-to-head trials, which is a challenge. So we will have to be guided very closely by federal findings in terms of the recommended vaccines. There's also a question about flu versus COVID vaccines and infection and the like. Very challenging time for us. It has not been super well publicized, but there's so much focus on COVID testing that there's actually a shortage of flu testing. So as people show up with symptoms, it'll be easier to find out that they don't have COVID than whether they do or don't have flu. But we will, so the good news is the evidence so far is the flu season, as long as people continue to wash hands and physically distance and the like, is likely to be a little bit easier than it has been in the past. Bernadette, I don't know if you want to add anything to those.
No, I think that's great, Hal.
Great, thank you. Just to let everyone know, we have about five more minutes for questions. So I asked Ramona if she could find a place where you can get more information about the dependent care FSA. And so she's put a link and an email address if you have questions there, because I see that there are a lot of those. So a couple of questions with respect to Black staff and racism on campus. I think everyone is aware we have a Black Thriving Initiative. I don't know, Chancellor, do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, thanks, Hal. And thanks very much for those questions. It's something that I hope we have an opportunity to underscore as we're all getting together here. You know, when COVID hit, we were very proud that there was a whole university response to that challenge to the basic health and well-being of the community. And you know, not only did the medical system respond, you know, the School of Humanities responded. Everybody felt that there was an obligation to meet the moment. And with the videotaped killing of George Floyd, it was clear that that is a moment that is even at least as presenting a challenge to us that requires also a whole university response. So we asked Doug Haynes to take some time and consult with many people. And the challenge was to adopt the most comprehensive and hopefully efficacious response we could come up with. And if you haven't had a chance to review what the elements of the Black Thriving Initiative are, I hope that you'll take some time, not just to visit the website. And if you put UCI Black Thriving Initiative, in the search, you'll see it right away. But there's also a very detailed report that's associated with it. And what I'd like to say is that it has some elements in common that we will be focusing on, program development, faculty recruitment, and the like. But fundamentally, what we're hoping is that everyone thinks where you are, what we can do to make serious ongoing progress in the culture of the campus, so that we can all commit ourselves to ensuring that our Black colleagues feel as though this is a place without impediment where they can thrive and where we can be a model. And I don't want to underestimate the challenge. But if we all mobilize around this the way that we mobilized around COVID, I think that we can meet the challenge. And I want to thank many people from across the university who have already stepped up. There are plenty of examples of local offices, departments, centers, and institutes that are really rising to the challenge where they are. And we'll be meeting with the Academic Senate before too long. And the Academic Senate has also committed itself to a serious and systematic review of its activities, as we are doing as well on the administration side. And my hope is that this is a time when we can all come together around just such a clear imperative. And so thanks in advance for everyone who's going to take that kind of call to action seriously. And I'm hoping as this academic year continues to unfold, we'll see how it really matters if we all sort of step up under these circumstances. So thanks for that question.
Jeff, I don't know if you want to add anything, maybe mention the Friday retreat.
Yeah, thanks, Chancellor and Hal. The Academic Senate is working closely with Doug's office, Doug Kane's office, on the Black Thriving Initiative. This Friday, the Senate leadership is meeting with the leadership from the administration side, and we are working together in breakout groups. And so it will be a virtual meeting, and we have specific assignments of the issues that we want to try to brainstorm on and find good ways forward. My own sense quickly is that this is an issue of community, and it's an issue of taking care of each other. And so it fits with the other things we've been talking about today. Whether it's the pandemic, whether it's Black Thriving, we are a community and we're strong, and we work together.
Thanks, Jeff. So we're about out of time. I'm going to mention a couple of things. One, there was a question about parking. So Ron, do you want to say a few words about that?
Yes, just real quick, Hal. We plan to continue waiving fees for parking for the winter quarter. And then we'll revisit it again with the Chancellor and the Provost in the spring. But for now, we'll continue the same practices we've had, and we're monitoring that closely. Thanks, Hal.
Great, thank you, Ron. There's been a little trouble with the link. Let me just say, if you are having trouble with the link, if you go to the ucnet.universityofcalifornia.edu, that is the UCOP homepage, and go to the benefits page, on the bottom right-hand corner of the benefits page is a benefits news area, and that link with that title is there. That is important changes to UC benefit programs for relief during the pandemic. So you can hopefully find that yourself. Let me thank all the participants, more than 1,300, for the many questions. I apologize if we did not get to your question, but we're really grateful for everything that you've been doing to keep UCI moving forward. Let me send it back to the Chancellor for a final word.
Thanks, Hal. Thanks to everyone who participated, who helped organize this. And thanks to everyone who showed up, asked questions. We'll keep in touch with you. If there's some things that you really think that you need an answer to, that you didn't get an answer to, there's ways in which you can just try to let us know, and we'll try to get back to you. Hopefully we covered a lot. And I just want to end by reminding everyone that so far, while we're facing these challenges, I think we are starting an academic year in as strong a position as possible. We've had enormous successes. The university still is doing great work. and that we have confidence for the future, even if we know that we have to solve some problems. So I'm hoping that you're staying well, that you're staying sane, and that you can stay optimistic about the future of the campus. And as we learn more about various programs and about decisions that are being made, we'll be sure to let you know. So thank you all very, very much for everything you do, and also for participating in this town hall.